Hello, dear students. In this video, we will learn about the present simple tense. Remember to write down any doubts or questions you have. First of all, when do we use the present simple? We use it to talk about permanent states. For example, we study at Universidad Nacional. We also use it to express habits and repeated actions, like routines. For example, they always have breakfast at 6 a.m. Another use is to refer to schedules or timetables. For example, our class starts at 8 a.m. Finally, we use it to refer to general truths. Those are conditions that do not change, no matter what. For example, the Earth is round. Here, we're talking about our planet. How do we form the present simple? Well, for affirmative sentences, we follow this structure. We need a subject, plus a verb, plus anything else we're saying. Let's look at some examples. I work at una. You work at una. We work at una. They work at una. And then we have the third person singular. It behaves a little different. For example, he works at una. As you can see, we need to add an S for the third person singular. Then we have she works at una, and it works well. On the other side, we have negative sentences. For this, we use this structure. We need a subject plus an auxiliary, either do or does, plus not, then the verb, and whatever else we're saying. For example, I do not work at una. You do not work at una. We do not work at una. They do not work at una. And for the third person singular, we use does. He does not work at una. She does not work at una. Or it does not work well. It is important to keep in mind that you can also use the short version of these forms. For example, with do not, we can say don't. And with does not, doesn't. Next, how do we ask questions about with the present simple tense? Well, we have two types of questions. Yes/no questions. And for these, we need to use the auxiliary do or does plus the subject plus the verb. Let's see some examples. Do you work at una? Do they work at una? And then we have the third person singular. And we use does. Does she work at una? Does he work at una? Or does it work well? The other type of questions that we have is information questions. They are also called WH questions. And the structure that we follow is this one. We need the WH word, which is what, how, when, where, for example. Then we need the auxiliary do or does, a subject, the verb, whatever else, and always a question mark. Where do you work? When do they work? How do they work? And then comes the third person singular. What does she do? When does he work? Or how does it work? We also need to talk about verb to be and the present simple. The verb to be has its own forms. For affirmative sentences, we need a subject plus the forms am, is, are. I am a student. You are a student. They are students. We are students. And then comes the third person singular. He is a student. She is a student. It is green. So here we have I, which is the first person, you, second, they, the third, we, he, she, and it. And those last ones are called the third person singular. We also have negative sentences with verb to be. For them, we need the subject, the verb in one of these forms, depending on the subject, and not plus whatever else we're saying. For example, I am not a student, or you can also say I'm not in the short form. You are not a student, or you aren't a student. They are not students, or they aren't students. We are not students, or we aren't students. For the third person singular, we have he's not a student, or he isn't a student. Then she's not a student, and the same, she isn't a student. Or it is not green, or it isn't green. The third person singular behaves in different ways, and as you could see, we need to add an S at the end with most verbs. Here you have a table that illustrates the way to identify what to add to the different verbs. Most of them would need an S. For example, she reads a lot. With verbs ending in O, as in go, he goes to school. We add ES. Verbs ending in S, as in kiss, she kisses her mom. If they finish with SH, as in this one, he washes his hands. CH, she watches TV. X, like he fixes the car. Z, as in it buzzes a lot. We also have verbs ending in Y. In this case, we need to eliminate the Y and change it to an I before we add the ES ending. So she studies English. What about questions with verb to be? Well, we also have yes/no questions, and they are a little bit different to the others. In this case, we don't need an auxiliary. we need the verb first, then the subject, and then whatever else we're asking. For example, are you a new student? Are we in the same group? Are they happy? Is he a professor? Is she your friend? Is it a new book? Am I in the right class? We also have information questions. And for these ones, we also use the WH word followed by the verb, are, is, or am, depending on the subject, and whatever else we're saying. For example, what are you reading? Where am I? When is it over? Who is she? How are they? So, this is it. How do you feel about this? Don't forget to write down any questions and ask your professor in your next session. See you next time. Bye-bye.